Hello there.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? So good to see you. Who else do we have here? Hello. Hi, Alexis.
Hey,
Marcus.
Jacalyn, nice to see you in person, at least via Zoom.
Hello, I love your
Hello, Patricia.
hair. It is gorgeous. So, as you come in, it would be nice if you would share who you are and particularly what part of the world that you're coming from. That would be wonderful. Who wants to volunteer to go first?
I'll go first. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Patricia A. Saunders, and I'm coming to you from Hayward, California. I'm a self-published author, and I write poetry and memoirs.
Wonderful. Anyone else want to go? Let's not be shy.
All right, so I'm Alexis Krasilovsky. I'm the author of Watermelon Linguistics, New and Selected Poems. That was published by Cyberwit in India, and it was a finalist in the 2022 International Book Awards.
Well, I'm going to give you a chance to talk more about your film, your book in a second.
Okay.
For right now, just kind of a quick introduction, and then we'll, and I'm trying to figure out why, who are you guys seeing on the screen? Are you all seeing Alexis?
Yes.
Okay.
I see.
Okay, let's.
I see 5 people, including myself, and Larry's name.
Okay. All right, let's do this. And then Stephanie, hello. We just
Hi.
your film. That was great. So we're all going to have a chance to share, but what I thought we would do real quick before we go into the sharing, let me just tell you a little bit about myself for those of you that don't know me. I'm, of course, Jacalyn Eyvonne, and I am the former publisher and editor of In the Company of Poets magazine, which was an international magazine back in the 90s. So it breathed life in the 90s, and towards the end of the 90s, it passed away, sadly, along with a lot of other of our poetry publications. But it was a great magazine at the time, and it was endorsed by Maya Angelou and her son, Guy Johnson, who was also a poet. I don't know if he still is, but he was a poet back then, and he appeared in the publication. I'm also, poet and writer myself. I'm a photographer and a filmmaker, and I also host and direct in the company of not in the company of poets, but the International Kids and Film Festival, along with this one. So that's who I am in kind of a quick nutshell, and I'll share a bit about my book a little bit later. I'm gonna let you guys go first. But before we do that, some of the filmmakers, Stephanie was in our first segment. Why don't you take?
No, mine is in the next. Mine's in the next segment.
Oh, in the next one. Anyone here whose film? Alexis, did your film air earlier?
What's the name of my film? The Parking Lot of Dreams.
Right. Talk about that real quick. And if anyone has any questions for her that was there watching, talk about your film real quick. It was great. I loved it. Yes, you, Alexa.
I was completely alone during the pandemic. And I lived in Echo Park, but too many people weren't wearing masks as they walked around the lake. So I thought, where can I go to just get some exercise? And it was this deserted parking lot in a secret location that I don't want to disclose in case we have another one of these pandemic situations. But I was the only person walking around there for over a year, and I began to know every little inch of the pavement and the traffic and the yellow bumps in the road and everything else. So I'm a poet, so I've made quite a number of poetry films. Some have shown in the Museum of Modern Art, the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York, so et cetera. So it just seemed like something that made sense to do, to go back and make another poetry film. So that's what I did. And then I also incorporated some of the avant-garde performance artist, Mouch and Hui's dance steps as the 12 dancing princesses, and David Guscoff's violin music. So it became not quite such a lonely venture once I started to edit the film and bring in other people like Vicki Sampson, who did our mix, and start collaborating with other people to bring it together as a little poetry film.
That's wonderful. Well, I truly enjoyed it. Now, are there any other poets here? Let's see.
I do poetry, but I didn't have
poets. Are any of the filmmakers here that were in the screening earlier? No? Okay, so then let's go ahead and get started. And there's not, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's not that many people on right now. So let's start out with maybe 3 to 4 minutes talking about your book, sharing your book. And then while everyone's doing that, go ahead and in the chat include your name, your book title, and your purchase links. So make sure you get those in there, because I will be sharing this later. It's not on live right now or anything like that, but I'll share it later. And I want to make sure that I include all of your links and information in any of the shares. So go ahead and do that and add that to the chat. And Alexis, since you started off with a little bit about your book earlier, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Well, yeah, for those of you who missed the 9 o'clock screening, I mean, I'm not a morning person, so I don't blame you. But there are several poems from The Parking Lot of Dreams, my film, that are in this book, along with photo collages from the film, as well as photo collages that illustrate quite a number of other films, poetry films that it's an invisible book.
It's disappeared.
Quite a number of other poetry films soundtracks. So I'm very much a filmmaker / poet, and that's what this book does. And in addition to that, I wrote the book Great Adaptations, Screenwriting and Global Storytelling. I was really delighted to see some films from other countries this morning by poets whose work they're adapting. And the book Great Adaptations is, mainly indie and Hollywood and Bollywood and Nollywood, Nigeria, films from all over the world. How do you take a novel or a short story, but also poem? What is the process? So that book may be useful for people who in the audience who are thinking of adapting or want to know more about the process. Great Adaptations, Screenwriting and Global Storytelling, and that won second prize in the 2019 International Writers Awards.
Great. When you add your films to the chat, make sure you separate them. So if you have your book, make sure.
I'll put my website up there. There's one film some of my films show for free on Canopy.com if you have a public library card. And one of them, Epicenter U, was the poem in that film was narrated by Wanda Coleman. So I don't always use my own voice for the poems, but you might want to check that out.
Right now. Give us the name of the book again.
The name of that film, the name of the book that has those poems in it, including the one that Wanda Coleman read in the film Epicenter U, is Watermelon Linguistics.
Okay.
And I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, great. Okay, who would like to go next? And what we'll do is we'll rotate when we get to the end, depending on who else is.
But first, you'll have to unlock your device.
What was that? Oh, is that phone person talking to me, listening in on my conversations?
Yes.
Shame on them. So let's have the next person. Mark is a kind of a special guest person. He's a poet that I've also known a long time. I think I've known him longer than you, Patricia, because we met many years ago. But I met Mark way back in Berkeley during that poetic era. Back then, where it was really kicking off, and it was at a little bookstore in Berkeley, California. And I think you said the name was Rebecca's. What was Rebecca?
Yes, Rebecca's.
And she's no longer available. A lot of businesses have left. I think she left sometime before. But that was just a wonderful, wonderful spot. And we loved it. And it was just a great gathering. And so, Mark, why don't you go next? We'll have Patricia, then we'll have Stephanie, and it looks like Garrett and Larry are here. So let's go in that order. And again, about 3 to 4 minutes. And then once we go around, if you have other things that we want to share, if you want to share some work, a poem, or, depending on the time, because we have about an hour and 30 minutes, I believe. So we have quite a bit of time here. And so let's go ahead and start with Mark, and you can share your books and a couple of poems because we do have some time here.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jacalyn, for this opportunity. I'm a little bit bashful when I'm not in front of an audience on a stage. I'm that total Jekyll and Hyde kind of person. So modest me that you'll see here is not the Jacalyn that she will tell you about from the poetry readings, where I'm a bit more wild. But I actually have two old books. The first is Reinvention from Mother's Hen Press. That cover is sort of a parody of the pop culture electric pineapple photograph from the 1960s. And it takes a pineapple grenade and puts an extension cord on it, basically useless as a weapon. But the whole concept behind reinvention is to reinvent yourself, to take those dangerous things about you and render them harmless. A couple people had the audacity to say that the book was a case study in lyrical allegory. But in more practical terms, I'm a big fan of Langston Hughes. And so this book is mostly in rather straightforward language, short poems. And it's also flavored with some of the concepts or songs from various diverse sources, such as John Lennon, Prince, and Parliament Funkadelic. And that came out in 1995. And within a few months, I both had my father die from cancer and lost 3 fingertips in a factory accident. So that kind of, took something away from the celebration, but it led to my second book, Grip of the Past, which was in a number of local bookstores in the Bay Area in the early 2000s, in the recovery section, as opposed to being in the poetry section. With a lot of self-help books, you got the psychobabble and all that, but poetry allows us in a very clear, straightforward way to kind of humanize one's experiences. So one does not need to have gone through, a physical accident at a factory to be able to relate to it because they've lost their wife or have gone through a divorce or, some other life-changing kind of situation. And so that's the story of those two books in a nutshell. And, because I'm missing a few fingertips, I'm not the most tech-savvy person. I drop smartphones rather than hold them. And so I don't have all the cash apps and stuff, but I still have PayPal and an email address. So, anybody who's wanted the book, just send me a few dollars via PayPal and I send it out to you. It's very old school, like I am. So
what do you want to share on in the chat as for how people will get in touch with you? You have a website or?
No, just the email address and then the PayPal name.
So if you're comfortable putting the email, go ahead and do that.
I am.
Yeah, okay, good. Just as long as you know that we'll be sharing it online. So
that's fine. It's the email in my books. So
okay. Well, go ahead and continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's all right. I was done, actually. I try to keep it short and sweet.
Okay.
So I don't babble too much.
So then let's move on to Patricia. And you have the floor.
All right. Thank you so much. So I ended up starting to write poetry after the passing of my mom, who had Alzheimer's. And my first book was, and it's so funny because that is how Jacalyn and I met. It was Through the Fire. And Through the Fire, I talked about, I'm trying to get the camera all set up. Through the Fire, it was me going through the grieving process and, as being a caregiver and now not having that person to care for. So I wrote all these feelings in poetry. From there, I have self-published 6 books. And I always did poetry, but I was challenged because when I would do book signing and reading, people wanted to know more about myself and what was the reason for me to write poetry. And so I wrote my memoir, and I'm trying to have that. Can you see it? And
Yes.
And it's there is sunshine after the rain. And with the memoir, I sprinkle my poetry through it. I talk about, like I said, coming up from Connecticut, where I was in a neighborhood where the majority of the people didn't look like me, and I was bullied, and then going away to college and experiencing being in an environment where everybody did look like me, but because I was brought up in this small town, I wasn't prepared for everything that was thrown at me. I talk about losing my father. I was a daddy's girl. So I lost my father to cancer, moved out to California so that I could become independent. And I write all about the experiences that I found in regards to being in California. Though I had siblings here, there were some underlying experiences from my youth that was being carried over into me being an adult. And, when my mother passed, it was like my world just turned upside down. And it's so funny that now everybody talks about, mental health, right? Well, my mom died in 2006, 2007 is when I considered suicide. I mean, I went through everything and everybody didn't know what was going on. And I had to share these feelings with my family. And so by sharing with my family, that's when we became closer. And again, I had to write about it. And by writing about it, it's like you take the bandage off of the scab and you go through those feelings all over again. By doing book conferences and everything, I ended up meeting more individuals. My book was being featured at the Black Caucus Convention. So I was going all over the place and talking to more and more people. But again, it was like, you're still reliving these experiences. And more people started coming up to me and talking to me about their experiences that they had, losing a loved one, going through, being bullied, going through surviving, not doing the suicide and what brought you through to the other side. And because of all of that, it ended up having me then go to Kentucky. And I went and I got certified to be a speaker. so that I could talk more about empowerment. And when you're going through all these different feelings, you know, poetry to me saved my life. And so, you know, that's why I'm still writing. My sister just passed on November 18th. And so that just threw me into writing because I was going through a writer's block. And so I'm getting ready to publish my next book called Saying Goodbye. Because again, you know, you just go through all these different experiences and anything can trigger you to go right to pen and paper or laptop and just write about it. And so like I said, words have been my saving grace. So that's me. I don't want to talk too much because my mom was a preacher, so you know I could talk if I need to.
We'll get a chance to talk some more. But you know, I think what you're doing is so important, and I really like the title of your upcoming book. And you know, we hear so often about people committing suicide, and you know, just recently, and you know, it's just really sad what's happening, and folks coming out of the 2 years here in our country of isolation. I think we all were a little depressed. I mean, it took me a while, even though we've been kind of out in public for this past year. It took me a while to really kind of get myself back on track, because I had been by myself, you know, with family, but isolated for such a long time and not really, you know, dealing with people. And I had to kind of relearn things. I hosted a talk show in the company of poets after the magazine passed away. But so I did that for some time. And I hosted talk shows for over 15 years. But it was like in the past few years, I had to learn to speak all over again. You know, and I was shy, just like Mark described. I didn't, you know, I just had become so isolated. So what you write about is extremely important and valuable. So that's wonderful. So Stephanie, let's go to you.
Hey everyone, I'm in Austin, Texas, and I always wrote poetry, but never really shared that until I started working at an art center here in town, and I met a poet. He's also a playwright named Zell Miller III, and him and some other guys were doing a poetry collective called Zenosia, and that included Dashade Moonbeam, who won the Slam Championship in the U.S. one year, and Enrique Cabrera, who is the poet that his poem is featured in my film, which will be in the next segment, and that's called Quetzalcoatl Path, Sacrifice. And that is a stop motion animation and motion graphics project that I started with Enrique. I said, would you, I want to do these projects about birds around the world in different mythologies and things. And I want to, you know, we're from Texas, so we should do the Mesoamerican god of Quetzalcoatl. And he said, okay. I said, well, you make a video about Quetzalcoatl. He's a god of sacrifice and a god of regeneration, and supposedly the birth of the most recent era. The humans of the most recent epic were born out of his bones. And so he wrote this amazing poem. He's my favorite poet in the whole world. And I haven't read y'all's stuff though, so maybe y'all be my next tied with Enrique. But he wrote a poem that's comparing his migrant and immigrant family sacrifice with the story of Quetzalcoatl in a metaphoric way. And so that's what that's about. But I also have done another film with him where I put a poem in it. I like to write about nature and haiku, which I'll share one. I'll share one we did together later. But I also mostly do visual art, and so I have made some books that have some of my haikus and visual art in it, which are on Blurb, and I put that into the chat so you can see my Blurb page. And I also run I've been running for the past 2 years a film festival called Tune Into Green. It's all short films from around the world about nature under 5 minutes or less. And that's where most of my video poems have been shown. So for every of the 9 films, I showed one of my video poems. So here's my Blurb books. And the one on here called Hidden Places. These are photo scrolls I made and I had exhibited in Houston and Austin. And that one has some of my haikus in it that I wrote while I was in Asia. And then if you would like to see more of my artwork, and including stills from my video poems and links to excerpts, you can go to the website. And here, if you're curious to see what Tune Into Green was about, my short film series, there's the trailers that have excerpts of different films right there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, and so then let's go over to Garrett. Are you still here? Yeah.
Yes, I wasn't.
Hi there.
I wasn't prepared to be on camera, but yeah.
I know that feeling.
I kind of rolled out of bed and just started watching. It's first of all, it's just wonderful, Jacalyn, what you're doing.
Appreciate that.
Very honored to be included. I feel a little out of place because it seems like you're all authors and published writers and so forth. And I primarily I'm an actor, and I've acted for 40 years. And about 8 years ago, I started a production company just because I got tired of sitting and waiting for the phone to ring, which is the life of an actor. And what we do at every meeting, I suppose worthy of mentioning here, is we do a group poem. And so if we have 25 to 35 people participating on any given, we meet every Thursday night. And my partner, Bjorn Johnson, runs the whole thing, the poetry part of it. And he'll tell us whether it's a theme or a title. We'll throw out suggestions. We vote on it. Once it's agreed upon, every night we read about 7 short scripts, 10 minutes or less. During the course of the evening, everybody writes 1 line, 12 words or fewer to that dedicated title or theme. And in the beginning, they were a little sort of scatological, and people were throwing lines out there just saying, how are you going to deal with this? It was a little, sort of sophomoric. But since the Zoom started, which was like 2.5 years or 3 years ago or whatever, it got very sophisticated. And one of our members said, we should make these into short films. And so that's how we started doing that. And we have 5 in your festival and that have been included. So I was very shocked and wonderfully surprised.
What are the titles of the 5?
The one in the next block, and I think the only one today, is called Advantages of Not Being in the Same Room, which was a pandemic-inspired poem, which was we were all cloistered in our little darkened hovels with our computer screens. And so that title, everybody, contributed their 1 line to that idea. And it turned out to be quite a nice poem. So one of our members had this idea. I related it to like the mythical story of Tristan and Isolde, where, the potion, the bottle, drinks it in front, whoever you see first, you fall in love with or whatever. And so he wrote this missive on a piece of paper, folded it into a paper airplane and sent it off into the world. And it lands in front of the love of his life, kind of thing. And so I helped him. I shot it all. Another thing I have to say, I said to my fiance, I was like, I don't know, these poems, that first block, it's so impressive. Just everything, the imaginative quality, the quality of the writing, how they shot them. I was like, wow, we're in the deep end of the pool here, because we shoot ours on like iPhones. I mean, that's all we do is we do. It's
I shot mine on an iPhone also.
Ours is a no budget mandate. I mean, we can't spend any money on them. So, but kudos to you, Alexis, because it's really, really beautiful. And oh, wait a minute, yours is in the next block, right? Or
no,
Stephanie?
Mine was the parking lot of dreams that just showed.
Yes, it was beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how you did that on an iPhone, because you'll see that ours are shot on iPhones. But I mean, I'm very proud of them. I'm really proud of them. But anyway, thank you for including us. And if anybody, by the way, I'll put, we have a different Zoom link and passcode every Thursday, as you know how these things work. Anybody is welcome, and you don't even have to participate. You can watch, you can get involved, you can read if you want to read some of the scripts that, we cast them right in the room most of the time. And
actually, in answer to your question, Gareth, there's a short chapter that I wrote in the book called Women Write Poetry about video films and video poetry. And it doesn't really discuss the technology of an iPhone per se, but it might give you some general ideas, because I've been making these kinds of films for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So
well, thank you for that. And I'm very interested in that, because it's relatively new for us. I mean, we're getting better and better at it. The first few were very primitive, and it's okay. I mean, my mantra is 8 years ago when I started the production company was just do something, because don't worry about whether it succeeds or fails, or if it's great, or if it's Citizen Kane in 5 minutes, just shoot something, make a movie. And that was our platform.
I think that's great, because I think in creative field, sometimes it's better to just do and experiment, make mistakes. Sometimes out of the mistakes come much more creative ideas than if you just simply learn the process, film school style.
Yeah.
Did you do the effects on your phone, Alexis, for your film we saw?
Actually, that would probably take around 2 hours or a whole seminar to answer, but there are a lot of simple things you can do with an iPhone, just with the apps that are immediately available. So
yeah, but the one that we saw, did you do the effects on your phone somehow?
Most of them were on the phone. Some of them were in Camtasia editing. Although Avid editing would have been better, but Camtasia was what I had available.
What's that YouTube, Gareth? That's
I'm going to put that's our YouTube channel, and be gentle, because like I said, we do the poetry videos for no budget, and then most of our short films that are on there, the budget was $300 to $500, and so only recently have we stretched out and spent a couple of dollars on some of these things, but that'll give you an idea. But anybody's welcome to the Thursday night meeting, and if anybody, I can put my email up here. If anybody's interested, you can just email me.
I would love to pop in at least once to see what's going on and support, so. Let's move on to Larry. I want everybody to get a chance to really talk about their books, and then we'll go around again, or just, do a general conversation and sharing. So let's, Larry, unmute yourself, and you have the floor. Here, let me see. Now I need you to do it. Bottom of your, there you go. No, bottom of your screen. There you go. Okay.
Okay.
You have the floor.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? My name is Larry Ukali Johnson Reid, and I'm a writer of 8 books. This was my first book. It's called Journey to the Motherland, from San Francisco to Benin City. And once I arrived in Benin City with my late wife, Chinwe, I was a teacher and she was an education officer. And we stayed there for 4 years. And I wrote this book as part of my experience, but it's also full of poetry because, back in high school when I was a BSU president, I was always carrying around different types of books that analyze words. And, so that helped to push my poetry because actually, it was not very many brothers at that time carrying a book around that had words like ding, ring, bing, ding, that gave me that, launch onto the poetry scale. And then after writing Journey to the Motherland and spending 4 years in homeland, Nigeria, which was an immense amount of knowledge for me because I grew up loving Africa. But, we'd only knew here pretty much what was in books or what we saw on TV. And a lot of what we saw on TV was disgusting. But being in Nigeria, seeing them drink palm wine, and even drinking palm wine, getting to know the length and breadth of the colonialism faced in Africa versus the same one that we faced in slavery was kind of a comparison that I needed to make, and I tried to show my people that same type of analogy that showed that we pretty much both came up in an oppressive situation. And then my third book was called History to Destiny through Afrocentric poetry. It was 304 pages. I started the poems when I was about 15, 16, and ranged up until I was 30. So that was one book that and I published it myself. I made 200 copies and I sold out. But now you get it through the Amazon. And by going to my website, which I put on the chat, then you could go to the book section of my website, and then as each book comes up, if you click on it, it goes straight to the Amazon page. So you could actually see the first 10 pages of all of my books, except my newest book. And so you have Loving Black Women, and that was, again, book of poetry, but also took an analogy that took a strange turn. And in fact, it was an analogy about Sudan and about how Sudan was having wars among themselves and how pretty much like some of the African-American groups that were having that type of conflict. And thinking that perhaps there would be some kind of resolution of conflicts in Sudan. And what happened is actually South Sudan broke away. Of course, they had their vote and they voted for it. But then South Sudan and the North Sudan still each of those areas had conflicts again among themselves. So factional disunity has been a problem for African Americans because we were divided and conquered in slavery, and the Africans were divided and conquered in colonialism. And it's something we have to deal with and get over. But also, I've written a book series on Obama called, I have two parts, and each part, part one and part two, spotlights his first term and second term. And it gives an analogy of the types of things that he wanted to do and couldn't do, as well as things he did. And he really didn't do as much for African Americans, but by the fact he was there, he was able to do some things. And then I had another book called Long Distance Love. Now, that long distance love was about a sham love in Nigeria, and it turned out to be a fiasco, but I had to write it down to get rid of it. I had to put it away. And finally, my latest book is called Letter to My Young Brothers by Larry Ukali Johnson Reid. It's a book about because I've been a teacher, so I've seen young brothers struggle with success. I've also witnessed this university study by Harvard and UCLA, a zip code area study that concluded that Black boys had the worst chance of success of all boys in America. So I had to respond to that, especially as a teacher. And seeing some of the problems in the classroom with some of the Black boys, but also seeing there are many solutions to the problem. And one of them, again, is my editor. His name is Dr. Renoko Rashidi. And that was one of the last projects he probably worked on before he passed away. But he was a very good brother. And he actually edited my book and also introduced my book. And I thank him in heaven, wherever he is, may he be well. But the book is it's a statement to Black boys about that you could do this. And, and it goes from elementary school, starts at elementary school, the second chapter, middle school, third chapter, high school, and the fourth chapter is whether to drop out or not, because most Black boys are faced with that, with the kind of things that go on in our neighborhood. So this is my book again. It's called Letter to My Young Brothers. And it's a book that I would say pushes Black boys towards success and toward being successful young men. And it's a book that will make a great present for any young brother who's growing up and struggling right now. Because I've been through the struggles, and I have something to give in my book called Letter to My Young Brothers and their parents.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. And, you can actually see a lot of Larry's sharing and his poetry work on the Facebook Monologues and Poetry page. He's one of my bigger sharers on a regular basis. And so I really do appreciate that, that you pop into that page on a regular basis.
Thank you.
So I wanted to, let me just share my book real quick, because we talked about, Patricia mentioned some of her struggles. Larry talked about some of his struggles. We all struggle. It doesn't matter what color you are. But here in the United States, there is just this increasing discord and division. And as a Black woman or a Black person in this country growing up in America, I mean, we have had to really come to grips with some really divisive divisions on a daily basis. It's just part of our life. And so in my book, I am not an inconsequential word. And in this book, I address how words really have impacted my journey from childhood to motherhood to womanhood through the blending of poetry and remnants. And each chapter offers a self-reflective portrait through a collection of poetry, and then stories that coincide with the words, the impactful words and episodes that have really journeyed with me throughout my life. And so it's 270 pages, and it also includes some illustrations. My son did the cover, and I just love it. And it includes some sketches that he also did, and they're kind of hard to see, but you're scattered throughout. So it's I kind of stepped away from the norm in putting this together. I don't necessarily say it's a memoir, I say short stories. But some may think it's a combination of memoir and poetry. And though that is not unheard of, because I've seen that many times, it's not the norm. And so it is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or signed copy through myself. I'm just doing the short version because I really want you guys to have an opportunity to really do some talking and sharing more so. But that's my book, and I do a lot of marketing.
You know, in 11th century Japan, the great writers were women in high-end literature, and it was the norm to combine memoir and poetry.
Yes.
That was the great literature of those centuries.
I put in the chat, there's a fairly new Black-owned bookstore called Black Pearl Books in Austin. And maybe y'all would like to reach out to them about carrying your books.
Definitely appreciate that. Thank you for that information. So we're going to get to go around again and just share, but I wanted to ask you guys, you know, how does writing come for you? Or does it come easy? Is it a difficult process? Do you have moments of the writer's block? How often? You know, just kind of share your feelings about that, and whoever wants to chime in first. How does writing come easy?
Writing has been easy for me because it was always my passionate response to the way life has been, you know, particularly for Black men. Since I was in school, in high school, even, well, not middle school, but definitely high school, life has been a very harsh journey. And we've been treated pretty harshly by America. So yes, definitely is something that inspired me. And so my writing flowed like a river.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to chime in? Right.
I'll go. I know for myself, I always wrote poetry as a kid, put my poems in, like, you know, the yearbook and everything, but it was something that I kept to myself and I was shy about. And then what made me decide I wanted to have something published is, again, like I said, my mom had Alzheimer's. And so here I am, I'm a single woman, I have no children. And I'm going, okay, what would my legacy be, right? Whereas my mom, when she died, her legacy is her children. So my words are my legacy that will continue to live on even when I'm not here. But is it always easy for me? No. I found that I went through a writer's block where I did not write anything since 2020, right? And then what my trigger was, my sister passing. And I then found myself sitting down and just letting the words flow. And I mean, tears, everything was coming out. And the next thing you know, I had 20 pages. And the excitement in regards to, okay, I'm writing again, because writing is how I express myself. Where it comes from, it doesn't necessarily have to come from a dark place. Before I was writing, if I was in love, if I was breaking up, if there was something that was going on in the world, I wrote a piece in regards to 9/11. You know, I wrote about, you know, oh, goodness. Now I'm at a writer's block, but I wrote about, you know, how we had Fruitvale Station, right? And the killing there. But I wrote about it because people were having all these different things, Oscar Grant. And so I wrote about, you know, is my life, you know, worth only 2 years? You know, I wrote about everything. So to now be at this space where I'm starting to write again, it is like, how can I put it? You're thirsty and now somebody has given you some water to drink. That's how I feel.
Wow. That's powerful. Yes, powerful. Go ahead, Alexis.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I've been writing poetry since I was 5 years old. My mother was a best-selling writer, so that was like a double-edged sword. That on the one hand, I had to not write in my own voice to please my mother.
Oh.
And at the same time, there were very high expectations. When I studied Yale, formally at Yale, I was in the first class that included women, and the poetry teacher said that women poets were great in bed, And I didn't sleep with him, but I was so embarrassed I didn't write anything or hang out with the other poetry people who ended up like publishing each other's chapbooks and giving each other awards, stuff like that. I mean, for years. I didn't write anything else until I joined the Free People's Poetry Workshop that was run by Etheridge Knight in Memphis, Tennessee in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And I was, I guess you'd call me, one of the token white people in that workshop. And he was very inspiring and very, very encouraging. I ended up running coordinating his West Coast poetry tour. And so I owe a lot to Etheridge Knight. I write, but having taught screenwriting as a professor for 35 years and giving it all to my students, it's like I just retired this year. And so now it's finally my turn. So the question is, am I going to give myself permission to put that energy into my own writing while I have the time to do so? It's a very exciting time, but it also doesn't come easily to make that space for myself.
Anyone else want to chime in? Stephanie?
I'll say, to me, it depends on how much time I spend outdoors as to when I can write a lot or not, because it truly is when all the ideas flow to me. I'm a gardener. I'm a amateur ornithologist and entomologist. So it's because I really feel connection with the outdoors. So when I spend more time outside is when I can write a lot of poems.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in on that one? So, go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
Sometimes for me, it's very easy. I see something and I say something about it, or I hear something and it sparks an idea in my head. And in 20 minutes, the poem is done. But that's not all the time. Sometimes if I want to tell a particular story, I might get 2/3 of the way through it and then decide I'm getting too far in the weeds. I'm writing a 500-page book, not a 3-minute poem. Let me put the brakes on this. I set it aside, and I might not pick up that piece of paper again for 3 months when I have a night of boredom. And then I look at it and I think about it and I rewrite it and edit it and anguish and pace the floor and bounce off the walls. And then I get it to where I'm satisfied with it. And then I go, but it needs an ending now. And then I get the writer's block with the ending. And so I'll put it aside. And then maybe a week or 10 days later, I'm listening to some music. All I have to do is hear a baseline beat or 3 words out of somebody's lyrics. And I go, that's it. And I'll stop whatever I'm doing, run, find the paper and finish the poem.
That's beautiful.
So it's really weird, but it's, unless a spark is there, I'm just like, blank page. There's got to be a spark to start it.
To piggyback on something Stephanie was saying before, I think sometimes when I'm in tune with nature, then the poems come of their own on their own steam. And that includes my own nature. In other words, being in tune with what my dream life is all about. Then the poems want to write themselves. And what's harder is really, I'm in the Writers Guild. So, in working on a screenplay, especially if you're doing it with deadlines and with producers and co-screenwriters and you're accountable, that I find much more challenging. But the poetry is something that comes naturally if you let it come.
I agree. Poetry is an experience. I think it's just you laugh, you cry, you're uplifted by it, encouraged by it. Sometimes you feel down, based upon the words, particularly when they're real truthful words. But it is an experience and it affects us all differently. Garrett, did you want to chime in, or Larry, on this question here?
I just wanted to piggyback on something that Mark said, because I happen to have a friend who was the producer of a lot of Aerosmith's early stuff, and they were in the recording studio and they had writer's block, and his name is Jack Douglas, and he said, it was during the day and they went to a matinee movie. He said, let's go to the movies. It was Times Square, and they went to see Young Frankenstein, and Walk This Way was a result of it.
Great.
Yeah.
But poetry to me has always been a way of expression. And just like when the principal at my high school tore down from the wall, big brothers and sisters, come to the BSU meeting this afternoon, and the principal tore it down. We had to find a way to respond to that, and so, yeah, it's always been a way of expression, but it's been always, something that's happening or going on that's caused it, just like with what happened with Floyd, George Floyd, things like that because there was one day, there was a young man whose chin was busted around here in my high school. And, he was taken away on suspicion, but in the course of it, his whole chin was busted. So yeah, we had plenty of things that would happen that would cause us to throw words, to have to respond to it, both physically and also, poetically.
Larry, what is VSU? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Black Student Union.
Oh, BSU.
Yes.
BSU.
I thought you were saying V as in victory. I got that.
BSU. Yeah. We had the first, during my high school, we had our first BSU emerge, and as it emerged, it was pushed down by the system and by the school.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. So when you guys are writing, who are you writing for? Are you writing for yourselves? Are you writing for others? For everybody? For a certain audience? Anyone?
Well, I like to write in ways that help people see the natural world in a different way, that it's actually, those are living beings, those trees are beings. They actually do experience something like emotions, and there is wisdom that can be seen with the birds if you really watch their behavior. They're not just a background for us. And so I like to share. Of course, I want to get my thoughts down on paper so I can organize them and then get them out into the world. But it's also important for me that people start to change their way of thinking and talking and treating nature, because otherwise we're all in a lot of trouble. And I'm starting to really research those things more, and that's also helping me write and make movies.
And there was a study just recently that really expanded on the fact that the trees, how they speak to each other. And I don't have the technical on this. Somebody could chime in and help out, but it was something that I don't know, that's going into the air, and they're right. Talking to each other.
That's right. They have chemicals. They put out chemicals and receive chemicals from each other through their leaves and their root systems.
Right. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And we all know that because at least I've always believed that everything is interconnected. I don't care whether it's the air, the trees, the animals, the furniture. I mean, to me, it's just we're all interconnected in some way. The air we breathe. And it's so funny when you think in terms of some of the hostility. Well, we're all breathing the same air, we're all kind of interconnected with each other, but then there's just so much discord. It just makes no sense whatsoever. But that's why we're here, to write poetry and help make the world a better place. Okay, so anyone else want to chime in later?
Yeah,
I will
I was going to say that the
Eric go and then Alexis.
I was going to say that the one of the poems in my book, Watermelon Linguistics, is called "Pass the Question," and it takes place during Passover, but it's a remembrance of all of the young Black men and women who were killed by police. And we have the oldest people at the Passover table remembering their lives. So it was a Jewish response to Black Lives Matter in terms of interconnectivity. And then I also, when I wrote my novel entitled Sex and the Cyborg Goddess, which won the 2018 Urban Award for Best Me Too Novel of the Year, I was very much thinking in terms of younger generations of women and what their responses were to the Me Too movement, as well as women in my own generation. So the interconnectivity in that case is intergenerational. And so that's why I rushed to get that novel out, which I'm now rewriting under my own name. I published it under the pseudonym Alexis Raphael because my father was alive and I thought he would disown me. But no, I think my agent thinks it's time for me to republish it under my own name, and I'm taking a little bit more time.
Great, wonderful. Well, let's hear from Garrett real quick.
I was just going to piggyback on what you were saying. It's like I have a belief that it's never the P. I call them the P people. It's never the P people who change the world for the better. The politicians, the priests, the pundits, the press. It's all the P people. It's the artists, and whether writing, whether it's poetry, whether it's prose, whether it's screenplays, whether it's sculpting, whatever it is, that's what changes the world for the better. Always, it's always up to the artists, and that's why I think it's important. However, circling back to, I often say that I'm not a writer. I'm a person who writes, and there is a distinct difference. But I do relate to you, Mark, because that's kind of how I write. Is that whenever I force something, whenever I say I'm going to write, if it's not coming just flowing naturally, I have to stop because I hate what I write, and I just so it's a waste of time, and then I don't know how to fix it, and so I just wait until it comes. But I have the luxury of not having that label. I lived with writers in New York. In fact, I lived with Kenneth Lonergan, who got the Academy Award for Manchester by the Sea, and Frank Pugliese, who became the head writer and showrunner for House of Cards. And those were writers. They got up every day and they wrote every day. They wrote. They were writers. I was an actor, so I could sleep in. Anyway, thank you so much.
Patricia or Larry, did you have a comment to want to add to that?
Well, I know for myself, when I'm writing, I am tackling topics that will touch people's emotions, male or female, right? We all experience love. We all experience the loss of love. We all will go through grief one way or another. If it's not from our inner circle, someone we know, I like I said, I cover in regards to, police brutality. I talk about, 9/11, but I also touch on domestic violence. And it's not necessarily women who experience, but men experience it as well. So anyone who is picking up my books will be able to relate. And, when I'm writing, it's therapeutic for me, but I haven't experienced everything. But it's just in regards to, I saw something, it touched me, it triggered me. Now I have to write about it so I can move on.
Good. Larry?
And my writing has been mostly political because I started out in the Black Liberation Movement at 16 and grew up that way. So my writing's been inspired mostly by politics and by the way we were treated. But in my latest book, I had to put together all of my rebellious teaching experience and teaching experience, and come up with solutions for what people could do to improve their chances of graduating, and put graduation as the focus. So it's kind of like everything came to that end, because now you still have a situation where you have nearly 50% failure rate in schools, high schools, for Black boys and for Black young men. And so it's become really a challenge. And so a lot of times in my classrooms, I've seen people would really concentrate on speaking from the hood, as opposed to using the language of the quote unquote white man, because there's a state of rebellion that grows along with the way the system is made and enforced on us. But at the same time, you can't help but advise a young Black boy that if you do use the guy's language in school, and then speak neighborhood at home, then you learn two languages instead of one, and get more out of it. So that's how my writing developed, from the foundation of injustice and as a way of fighting injustice, on to a way of arming people in a psychological way how to fight injustice.
Yeah. Ironically, Mark Twain is said to have been bi-dialectic. His friends when he was a kid were Black kids. And Huckleberry Finn was originally written as a Black character. And I only say that because Mark Twain is supposedly, the father of American literature. But he owes so much to Ebonics and African American ways of communication, and it's certainly a terrible thing when teachers are not attuned to what Ebonics are about, and they're in control of a classroom, shutting down students who really have a lot to say and a lot on their minds. It's a tragedy.
Well, I remember as my biology teacher, when I first got to Balboa High School, told us, he said, if any 5 of you were to attack me, I would take 3 of you out, So we've heard some shocking things from teachers. And so we have to respond, and we respond in words, but also we respond in our hearts and in what we see in the society. And so there's just a whole lot of generation for poetry from all of these kind of, 1860 all the way up until 1960, and we're still doing it, and it's still existing. It's crazy. It's a crazy world.
It is. It really is. So we are at 12:10. I want to give you a chance if anyone has something else they want to add about their book that they didn't think to mention earlier, or if you want to read a piece from your book, let's go ahead and do that. And then I think we'll kind of call it a day. That way we can all have a break, particularly if some of you are going to join the next screening, which is 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's in about 30, 40, 50 minutes. So that'll give us time to have a break, particularly for those of us that have been around since 9 o'clock Pacific time. So anyone want to start? Any
Can I just say, since Enrique had to work today, I put a link to another one of his poems he did with another video artist in the chat, and I shared his Instagram tag. If y'all go on Instagram, and then you can see more of his photography and poetry that way.
Okay, wonderful. Great, thank you. Alexis, anything that you'd like to add? Or?
I was writing in the chat to Larry about Usman Samdan, the father of African cinema, and how he addressed how France and Western Europe was conditioning how films were made and who the audiences had to be. And so I missed your question. I'm so sorry. I was so excited about what Larry was talking about before.
Did you finish your chat? No, I was just saying that if anyone wants to share something else about their book.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to read this piece that I have in the book called Love in the Neighborhood, because in San Francisco, we grew up in Lakeview, Hunters Point, Fillmore, and Sunnydale, different neighborhoods. And sometimes there was, police manipulating stuff between those neighborhoods. And so here I go. Love in the neighborhood. Love or it's no good. One love like love in the hood between neighborhoods. Or life will be no good. Love Fillmore, love HPBV, love in Lakeview, one love in the hood. One love or it's no good. Do not be ill. Black love is needed on Potrero Hill. Love in the neighborhood. Black love or black death. Make up your mind. One love for our kind. There won't be enough brothers for every sister if the killing don't stop, mister. Brothers got the power to make it stop, or we will see another brother drops. Do not shoot a brother. Don't make a brother fall and stand in his blood. What happened to one love? Brothers got the power to make the shooting stop. Calling on the brothers on every block. Cause what is happening to murdered brothers, mothers, wives, and sisters, sons, and daughters? The power to make it stop is in the hands of brothers on every block.
Very good. Anyone else that would like to add something about their book or
I have a half-page poem from my book if you want me to share it.
Please.
It's called 2 Weeks in Nevada. Married on Monday, divorced on Tuesday, Mustang Ranch Wednesday, VD Thursday, cured on Friday, slept through Saturday, virgin Sunday, remarried Monday, fed up Tuesday, pregnant Wednesday, but not Thursday, suicide Friday, stomach pump Saturday, reborn Sunday, prayed for Monday.
Wow, sounds like my life. Great, I love that. I love that. Great, 2 great pieces thus far. Anyone else? Go ahead, Mark.
All right, I'd actually like to address the question of audience and then segue into a poem from my book. I believe Patricia said at the beginning of this Zoom meeting that she had been writing poetry for years, just for herself. And I was the same way. I'd been writing poetry for like 15 years before somebody dragged me to an open mic. And then all of a sudden I had an audience, people who actually liked my stuff and did not think I was, loopy for being a poet. But, in many ways that can be like preaching to the choir. And so I was always hungry for, expanding the audience. And I looked at Langston Hughes, my absolute favorite poet of all time. and how he stated that, he, unlike most of the poets of his era, tried to talk about ordinary people. And he wrote for the ordinary person, not for the other, haughty-toddy poets. And so that kind of really drove me. And so when it came time for my book, Grip of the Past, talking about my own experiences, it was just such an honor to be able to share from the book, not only in front of poetry audiences, but in places that poets don't go. AA meetings, libraries, doing author discussions, where they've never had a poet. It's always been like the Stephen Kings. And some of the powerful experiences. And this poem I'd like to share, actually at one of those events, a man stood up and said, I've never written a word of writing in my whole life, but I was so moved by this. And he told a 5-minute story about how he had lost his wife 2 years ago and all the things he was going through. And he had no one to share them with. And then one single tear started streaming down his cheek. And he goes, I'm sorry, this is even the first time I've cried since my wife died. And it was just such a powerful moment for everyone else in the room. It was transformational for a lot of people, including myself. But the poem is called Scars. She asked me about my injury. So I told her of that day at the factory when a piece of machinery cut 3 fingers off my hand. Looking at torn flesh and exposed bone with blood sputting out. The only fitting term is total shock. 3 operations in 6 weeks. Then my father died from cancer. It's a miracle my sanity didn't plummet through the cracks. All the while she comforted, nodded, and said she understood, and boy, did that make me feel good. Then she started to tell me her story. Coming home, she was 14, and finding her mother on the floor. Someone had left an axe in her head. She went from sympathetic to sad. I made a mistake when I said I understood. She got mad. Until you've seen what I've seen, you don't know how I feel. Easily enough, she could be in my shoes, although highly possessive of her own. So I guess sharing battle scars is nothing like showing pictures of your grandkids.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Stephanie, did you want to share anything? I think you're the only one that hasn't.
I had like a 1.5-minute video poem that I'd like to close it out with. So if you, Jacalyn, want to read something, can I do mine last?
I'm not going to read today. I'll read tomorrow. Did everybody else get a chance? Patricia. Okay, let's have Patricia go, and then you go, Stephanie. Okay. Your mic, Patricia.
Thank you. The poem that I'm going to read is from There Is Sunshine After the Rain, and it's called Prisoner in My Mind. As I look out the window, trying to put the words together, I can see them, but they can't form to come out of my mouth. I know you're someone who cares for me. If only I can remember who you are. My mind is slowly forgetting things. What day is it? Where am I? Can you bring me home? Sorry, I don't know the address. Tomorrow I'm back to normal. For a moment, I'm able to laugh with you, share memories of my past. And then a cloud comes over me again, brings me back into my prison cell, embarrassed to depend on you to clean me, not being able to control myself. What is my world coming to? You visit me daily, stroking the hair away from my face, smiling at me, looking into my eyes, waiting for that familiar recognition. A moan is all I can get out. You smile and I see the words jumbled in my brain. I just can't remember how to form them. And I'm praying for the freedom, ready to break out of this prison. I hate this disease, Alzheimer's.
Oh. You guys are all wonderful. Everybody's I just love all your work. Everybody's great. I love the sharing. We're all going to get the, I'm going to have Stephanie go up in a second, but you all get the link to the open mic tomorrow. And hopefully we'll see you at some of the other screenings throughout. I know it can get to be taxing, but I tell you, we have some fabulous, fabulous, fabulous films upcoming. So I'll be sitting in on all of them, and hopefully you guys can, join in on the other screenings as well. So let's go ahead with Stephanie.
Okay, this is silent, and I need you to let me share my screen, Jacalyn.
Let's see, how do I do that?
If you just click the 3 dots on Stephanie's over Stephanie's face, then you should be able. Oh,
okay,
actually,
here's
that's
the
not
3
going to
dots.
be.
Allow
there,
to. Let's see. Chat. Stop video pins. By like make host. Is it make? No.
Yeah.
Make host.
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to do that.
Make co-host.
I just see make host. So well, let's
okay,
try.
Make host. Okay. Sorry.
Change host to Stephanie. So I guess you'll have to change it back to me afterwards, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to do that. So.
Okay, yeah, that's gonna work.
All right. Can't wait.
It's my holiday treat for y'all.
Oh.
Let me see how I get it to be.
Audio?
There's no audio.
Oh.
Wow, that was great. And simple. And as simple as it was, you get that feeling of the impact of the snow coming down on you. Very nice, very nice. And I think with that, this is a great way to end it out. I will thank you all, and I will see you hopefully tomorrow and throughout the day. Okay, Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacalyn. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Before we go, everybody put your books up. Hold those books up.
I didn't bring mine.
Okay.
Put
All
that
right.
in the chat.
That's okay. Bring it tomorrow if you're able to join us. Okay, thank you. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Signing off.